Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Silicon Beach Mobile Startup. I'm your host, Baron Murdoch. Some investment companies become prolific, but usually a person doesn't have as much success as our guest today. Join me in welcoming Tim Drpaer. Tim,
Thanks,
thanks.
Baron. Did you
Oh, I
hear that?
appreciate you taking the time, man. I love your office, your backdrop, your superhero
Yeah,
in the back.
you see that? We got Superman back there. You know, and part of it's a mess because I had my daughter's 2-year-old did a little redecorating here. Ran around and just basically randomly pulled things off the shelves and threw them around. And yeah, if you saw the rest of the office, you'd say, "Oh boy, this guy has really
Oh,
cut
wow.
off the." Anyway, yeah, happy to be here, and thanks so much for having me on your show.
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate it. And I don't know how many years ago it was that I actually flew up to Menlo Park with Cooper Mariamo and met with your dad. I want to say it was 2014 or 15, maybe.
You know, he's 92 now, and he just came on Meet the Drapers with me. We have a show for entrepreneurs. It's a little like Shark Tank, but people can invest. So you could invest $100 in the company that you see through a crowdfunding system. And Dad is on the Meet the Drapers with me. My dad and my daughter and my sister, and it's all generations. It is funny, and Dad is terrific on that show.
Oh,
So I'm
man, I
glad you
can
got a
imagine.
chance to meet him because he is something.
I can imagine. Yeah, I was really impressed. And I was reading a little bit on the insight on your book, Startup Hero. We want to focus on that a little bit. And you highlighted, you described your dad as kind of like the spirit, your mom as kind of like your guide, and your wife, you love your life, and kind of the inspiration. So I wanted you to touch on those three. I was like, wow, that was impressive.
Yeah, my dad, he really is amazing and has done so much with his life. And he'll take a thing and he'll go after it until it's completed and fulfilled. And it's amazing how important that is in life to execute well, not just to have an idea or whatever, but to execute well. And that's important for all entrepreneurs to know. In fact, I just had an email exchange with Elon Musk. And Elon, I said, Elon, I wanted to get together and bash some ideas around with you. And he said, I'm too busy, and I believe that ideas are such a small part of this. It's all about execution. And so I guess that's the message for everybody out there, that if you really need to execute. And my dad has done that so well. He did it in the venture capital world. He did it with the UN development program. He did it with the Export-Import Bank. And then he did it with his nonprofit organization, DRK Foundation. Each time it was like, I have this idea. I know where I'm going. I know what I need to do. And then he would just execute on it. And that was a great thing I learned from him. I also learned that it has very little to do with who's selling and who's buying. It's more important just the human connection, and who you're talking to. Make that connection. Doesn't matter who's buying, who's selling. It's just like, hey, let's figure out if something we can do together.
Yeah.
And so those were all things I got from my dad. My mom died, but she was an amazing spirit, and she was sort of, I said guide because she was always really solid on morals, and you know, she had a good sense for humanity and the community and all of that, and how we acted in that community. And she never said a single negative word about anyone in her life. And she
Wow.
said that she never did because in high school, she said something really nasty about somebody in her high school class and turned around and she was right behind her. And she got this message from the stars that she would never again say any negative thing about anyone in the world. And I've tried to do that. I'm not, because I'm in the venture business, I have to say, well, this isn't really going to work. But I do bite my tongue before I say, this is a jerk or something. But mom, that was what she did, and everything was positive. So that was a really nice thing. And my dad's a great optimist too. So I had to get swept up into that.
Yeah. I think being in this industry, you're forced to be optimistic because you never know where the exit or where is that next turnaround.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, we have to be optimistic because, a pessimist never really accomplishes anything. They're very good at pointing out what's wrong, but they don't ever really accomplish anything. You have to be an optimist, and you have to be willing to sort of fail and fail again until you succeed. You have to stand out there and go, we're going up the hill, and people have to be willing to follow you. And you've got to actually eventually get to the top of the hill, whether it works or doesn't. You got to get there. And that is an optimist. An optimist will get you there. And so I encourage people to be optimistic. But if they are pessimists, there is some value to that. Because an optimist needs about 15 optimists with them, but they also need maybe one pessimist for every 15 optimists who is always pointing out what could be wrong.
Now, I read that you described your partner, John Fisher, right?
Yeah.
You described him as being an intellectual but cautious, and you being aggressive and optimistic. And that difference between you two.
We were an amazing partner. We were amazing partners. He was very good at managing our limited partners and raising capital. And I was good with the entrepreneur. And we kind of divided up pretty much that way. I mean, he got involved in the entrepreneur. I got involved in the raising of the money, but he had this natural ability to show credibility. He was incredibly good at showing credibility. And I think I was good at capturing or empathizing with the entrepreneur. Empathizing in not just in like, hey, boy, this is going to be tough for you, but empathizing in his vision, his or her vision. So they start on their vision. I could capture that. I could imagine it, and I could project out whether this was going to be a good thing or a bad thing or a new thing or whatever 5 or 10 years from now. That was kind of my strength. And we got along and did a great job for a long, long time. We were at each other's heads for a while until we brought in a third partner, and Steve Jurvetson, and he was a pretty good tiebreaker whenever we couldn't come to terms on something. And now we've kind of all gone off solo. I've got I spun off and recaptured Draper Associates. John joined DFJ Growth, the later stage fund, and Steve went off and he started his own venture firm too. So yeah, we all kind of went in different directions, and it was time. What happens in venture capital is if you build too large a partnership, your decisions become a little milk toast. They become
the velocity or the speed of which making decisions.
The velocity is very slow, slows you down a lot. But also, to get 10 people to agree that this is a good idea, very difficult to do. To get 2 people, 3 people is a lot easier. But with 10 people, you end up with decisions where everybody's kind of going, yeah, it's a pretty good deal. I'll let it go.
Is it a group think, or is it really a good deal?
And we tried lots of different systems, and one of the systems we should have employed was the decibel level in the room when we were fighting over whether we should do an investment or not. Because if the decibel level was raised very high, we knew we were onto something.
Okay.
Even if there were more people against it than for it.
That's a good.
There was something going on. It's like, wow, it gets people to be passionate about it.
Right.
You're starting a business. You're up against these big, huge monoliths that have been around for years and years, have tens and hundreds of thousands of people working for them. You got to figure out, how to capture the passion of some customers somewhere.
Now, I know my audience, most of them, the smart ones, will already know who you are. But the fact that you have 7+ unicorns from Hotmail,
35.
how many total?
35.
35. Okay, I'm a numbers guy. I like that. 35. Let's keep it track. So if you got 35, then you have way more than the $230 billion in market cap that I see that you've created from those companies. That is huge.
Yeah,
from Tesla to Hotmail to Skype to DocuSign to Baidu to Solar City. Incredible.
Yeah, actually, that's right. And Tesla has crossed the $150 billion market.
180-some billion right now.
Yeah, great. So that, I think, is the farthest along. Although arguably, Skype, if it were independent, would probably be worth more than that. And maybe Hotmail would be. I don't know if they stayed independent, maybe they would have been up there. But we're very happy with what those companies have done. Those people have accomplished so much. We can all communicate in a much better and easier and more wonderful way, free around the world because of these people. All the people in China have access to all this information because of Baidu. We've had, it's been really great. And getting involved with Elon, where he focused on the electric car, and then he's getting us off the planet. I think those are two things that we need. Either you save this planet with the electric car, or you get off this planet and figure out how to live on Mars or somewhere else. But he's hedged his bet. So we're thrilled with what these companies have been able to do. They've been so much, and it's so much fun to back the entrepreneur at this early stage when they're just getting going and seeing the sparkle in their eyes and the vision that they have, and say, oh, okay, is this a good vision? Is this something I want the world to look like? And then I'll back it and build a relationship with somebody who might end up being a huge success, or they might end up having yet another one of our failures, which we do have. We probably lose half the investments that we make.
Now, I noticed when you first took your SBIC, people may not know, you took the SBIC and you leveraged it, came up with $6 million of investable assets. And your first investment in a home security company, was that your first loss?
That was a disaster. But unfortunately, I did 3 at the same time, or roughly the same time. One was Parenting Magazine. One was Parametric Technology, which became PTC, which is it's 12.
That was your home run. That was a $50-something million
that was
winner.
a big monster. But I was able to And back then, government was a lot easier. We, look, I was 26 years old, and I was leveraging up some private companies and borrowing government money to get going. And I remember it was only one guy who ran the SBIC program for the whole country. And nobody else was there. Maybe he had an assistant, that was it. And I talked with him on the phone, and we went through it, and he was going through his checklist, and he goes, okay, well, wait, you have to have 10 years of investment experience. And I said, well, I've been investing since I was 10 years old. And he goes, check.
He gave you the nod.
And he gave me the nod. And then I was able to borrow $6 million to go to put to work. And that was amazing. And now the SBIC, I have to pay $150,000 in legal fees just to get my first application in for a new SBIC license. And there are 800 people in the SBIC program, and it's far less efficient and effective. It's just too big, too many people. It should be back to that one guy, and we'd be much better off. And now there's so many rules, all these regulations, all these things, and the leverage we get is only 1-to-1. It used to be 3. I think they have a few special cases where they'll take it a little higher, but I know that I think what's happened is they've learned from their mistakes. So anybody who failed to pay them, I've been fortunate. I've been able to pay them back once, re-lever it up, pay them back again. And now I'm talking to them one more time. But it was an amazing program before, and it's sort of an okay program now.
Okay. Now, one of the things that I noticed in your first investments, you were in a certain dollar range. You were putting between 175 and 250,000 per investment. Nowadays, fast forward, what is a reasonable amount to invest in a startup? If I'm a guy who's creating a fund that's a $100 million fund, what's a reasonable amount to put with a company for the first time?
So if you have a $100 million fund,
yeah,
you should think in terms of 30 to 40 investments. Well,
okay.
If it's early stage. If it's late stage, you can cut that down to 15. But if it's early stage, 30 to 40 investments. And that would mean, and you need management fees. So let's say that the $100 million is really only investing about 80. You invest 80 million in 40 companies, that's 2 million each. And what that also means is that that's 2 million over the life of that fund, which means your first investment should be like $500,000 or $750,000, because you're going to need to double or triple it to stay in as other investors come in. And you're going to want to also be opportunistic, where if you've got a real winner, you want to be able to load up the boat.
Have some fresh powder that you can put in there, right?
Yeah, you want to have some fresh powder and just load it up. But in any case, you never want to really have more than 8, maybe 10%.
8 to 10% of the company?
8 to 10% of the fund in any one company.
Okay.
You really never want to get that exposed.
Okay.
You end up hanging out there a little bit too much. And people want a diversified portfolio of venture capital. They don't want you to back 3 companies. And if you're investing $750,000, that's great. For very early stage investments, you can lead those deals, or it's something where you could kind of tag along on a Series A and then participate later in B, C, D.
Now, it seems like I've been seeing that probably in the last 5 to 7 years, a lot of VC firms have been at tag along somebody has a winner and they let everybody pile in, they keep forcing the valuation up, but the revenue doesn't justify these valuations. What do you think of that?
Well, avoid those deals. You don't want to be in the what do they call those? The venture capital club deals, where it's like the club all comes in at once. It's like the sheep all running right off the cliff, and just because they're all in the pack, and so then they all have to run off the cliff, and then the sheep, none of them is willing to face the fact that they were wrong. So they'll just keep pouring money into that thing to justify their reason for getting into it. Yeah. A lot of those, there are some weird non-economic issues that come up in various venture capital partnerships that make no sense, which I've been freed of by spinning out and doing my own thing.
Now, let me ask you this question. I noticed that you went to Detroit to meet with the Rhubarb Investment Group. What did you learn from that?
I love that you read my book. You are awesome. You are awesome. That is so much fun. Yeah, that was one of our early pitches. John Fisher and I, the whole thing went wrong. We got we were supposed to fly into Detroit to see them, but we got diverted to Milwaukee. We had to drive all night. We stayed in a Motel 6 in Battle Creek, Michigan, as I remember, where
Kellogg territory.
And then we finally got there at noon, pitched the Rhubarb Investment Club. They turned us down. And then we ran out of gas on our way to the airport. And I had been running. I had been doing preparing for a marathon. So I could run and run and run. So I said, John, I will go run and I will get gas and I will come back up here and I'll pour it into the tank. And John goes, okay. And then he thought, well, I'll push the car so that it gets closer to where Tim is and it's downhill. So John pushes the car down the hill about three-quarters of a mile. So
wow.
I come back, a half hour later with gas, and there's no car. So the two of us, we clearly, and that's kind of the way it operated. We kind of went out and we operated in the way we thought was right. And then we come together and we go, oh, that's what you did? Oh, too bad. Anyway, we eventually got to we finally ran into each other, got the gas in the tank. We were in such a hurry, we left the car on the side of the road for Hertz to come pick up. And we said, okay, we got to pay the extra thing for the Hertz to just come pick it up because we got to make our plane. And then we got into the plane, and this was also hilarious. They stuck us way in the back of the plane in 3 seats that did not lean back. So, and we're both big, and so was the other guy. And I was in the middle seat. And so I would get up to stretch my legs, and then the flight attendants said, well, why are you up? And I said, I'm not sure I can, take the whole flight sitting in that little tiny place. And so I'd like to just stand here for a while, and then I'll go back, sit down, I'll come back and stand. They said, well, if you're standing here, why don't you help us out? I said, okay. They handed me all the hot towels, and I went, hot towel, hot towel, hot towel, hot towel. They handed out all the hot towels up and down the airplane. It was a great trip, made for a great story, but we came back with nothing. Rhubarb Investment Club did come into our next fund. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, but from that event, you went to your meeting for was it the PTC meeting?
Oh yeah. let's see, oh, 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 you're having some fun today. So I got a chance to, first I met with this guy. First I had a summer job with Bill Poduska, who had started Apollo Computer. And he was very nice and let me kind of be a fly on the wall for the summer. And I was in between years at business school, and I went back to business school, came back, I started my venture business, and I called Bill and I said, well, what are the software companies that are going to run on this Apollo hardware? And he gave me names of two companies, and one was SPG Consulting, and one was Polygen. Polygen was a computer-aided chemistry company, and SPG Consulting was computer-aided design, hardware or physical, mechanical design. And I had been studying that market for a while. So anyway, I got very excited about this, and Don Feddersen, who was an expert, he had run some computer-aided mechanical design company in the past, and he was a venture capitalist. And I said, come join this company and we'll invest together and it'll be great. So we did that. And then he said, well, I've got this great CEO and VP of business development that I want you to meet. And so I went, and being a young guy, but getting a little bit older, I went and I shook hands with all these two guys, and wanted to make a good impression and all that. And I sat down, my pants ripped right up the back because I had gained weight and I didn't really know it. It happens to you when you're like 29 or 30. All of a sudden you fill out and your old pants don't work. And so we got a big kick out of that. And they were fantastic. They were great to work with. We helped get that company started, and they built an amazing company in parametric technology.
So Tim, a lot of people, my dad asked me a question early this morning. I was talking to him, and he said, do you think it's the idea or the people in the company or the person driving the company that make the difference? Which one are you investing in, or it's both?
Well, here I can tell you how it was at the beginning, and I can tell you how it is now. At the beginning, I would go around and knock on doors of anything that had software written on it. Any new construction project anywhere out there in the Silicon Valley, I'd knock on the door and say, hey, I'm in the venture capital business. Nobody knew what that was. I had to explain it. And then the CEO would look at me kind of circumspect. I don't know about this guy. But he says he wants to write me a check, so I'm going to listen. And so then it was a lot more about the people, but my clearing place was that most of what I did some consumer deals too. Most of what I did was software. Well, today, most of what I do is technology, but instead of like knocking on doors in hopes that I can talk to somebody, I get 20,000 business plans a year, and I choose about 20 of them to fund. So it's a big ratio.
20 of them?
About 20 out of 20,000. And so I can't meet with 20,000 people. No way I could do that in a year. So I filter them down based on the idea, but it's not really the idea. It's really, is this market currently dominated by monopolies or oligopolies that are providing bad service at a high cost? So you can, things that come to mind are banks, provide bad service at a high cost. Insurance companies, same thing. Healthcare, bad service, high cost. Relative. I mean, a lot of great workers do a lot of great work, but it's just for the amount of money you pay, they're providing bad service for a high cost. and there isn't enough competition to improve that. The drug companies, I mean, there are only like, I don't know, 7 major drug companies, and they pretty much dominate whatever it is that's going to go into your body when you're sick. It's clearly wrong, and it needs to be broken. But and so it's these entrepreneurs that I'm backing that are going to go after that. And of course, the biggest monopoly, oligopoly that exists, that provides the worst service at the highest cost, is government.
Right.
And interestingly, government, healthcare, banking, insurance, real estate have all been pretty immune to the technology of the internet coming and sweeping through and changing media, communications, information, hotels, taxis. The internet changed a whole bunch of industries, but those biggest industries in the world were pretty much immune to the internet. But they're not immune to these new technologies. New technology like artificial intelligence and surveillance combined with Bitcoin, blockchain, smart contracts. Suddenly you could put an insurance company together with just machines. You can do healthcare with just data. This COVID thing has proven that the best solutions to a virus like this tend to be found through what they call the dry lab, which is all data driven, and not the wet lab, which is like chemicals and biochemicals.
Testing.
It's put the disease up there on the screen and run a whole bunch of drugs against it and find one that fits the best. And then that's the one that you can use to get rid of COVID. Well, these new technologies, you know, and Bitcoin, my gosh, it's so much better than our current currencies that we have a whole new world opening up, and the banks are all resisting it because they kind of like the old way, where they get 2%, 4% every time you swipe your credit card. That's going to the bank.
Right.
And now that's not going to work anymore, because you can pay, if you pay with Bitcoin, it can be frictionless. It can be no payment to the bank.
Right.
So banks have to rethink what their service is. They have to improve. And that competition that's created by these new startups is really valuable. So to finish up on a short question with a very long answer, I look for an industry that needs it, with a technology that's new, but usually not unproven. But it's a technology that's been around a little bit, but has never been applied to that industry. And then I meet the people. And when I meet the people, I'm looking for just a few things. I'm looking for, I want to say enthusiasm for the job, but it's not like a cheerleader. It's like deep down. I mean, because like you look at Elon Musk, he's very straight, you know, he's not cheering anything on. He's very dedicated and driven, and he's got perseverance, and he executes well and all that. I'm looking for somebody who has that in their heart, where it's like, I have to do this. This is so important to me. I need this to happen. The world needs to see this. And then the people who are the most successful were always the ones who told me that they did this to delight their customer, to make their customer so happy that they didn't even know they needed it, but boy, do they need it now. And that's sort of where Steve Jobs, his brilliance, is that he just knew what the customer wanted, even though the customer didn't even know it. And he did everything he could to make that customer happy. And having those two things, you know, sort of a real dedication to what you're doing and a love for the customer, you know, I want to provide this for people. That's a thing. Provide something great for people. That's when I'll back them. Uh,
And I spent like about 17 years in the investment business, 9 years in Chicago with Merrill, Citigroup mostly. And I had a short stint with Walmart, which I thought management structure, but I learned so much about processes and routines and systematizing and making things replicatable. And I thought that, there was a lot of things that are transferable in terms of, you look at computer programs, you got the front end and the back end, and the front end being like the user experience piece, and the stakeholders that you have being your internal staff as well as your customers, how well they understand that, and the feedback you have from one to the other, and the back end, all the data that you're collecting and the decisions that you decide on what direction you need to go in terms of whatever your data analytics tell you, what you need to sell more of, or what feedback they're saying in terms of the service is not great in this area or that area. Do you find that that's accurate?
that's a great analogy, because Walmart does all that amazing process stuff so that they delight their customer at the very end.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, hey, we're going to provide a great product at a great price, and we're going to systematize it so it's just so easy for you to get, so easy for you to buy. And they were just so good at that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, great companies can come from a lot of different approaches. Walmart squeezed the suppliers. They pushed and pushed and pushed and got the lowest prices they could. Target wanted to make sure that they had all the products you would want in one store. So anything you'd need, you go to Target and you'd get it. That was their thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then Amazon wants to get that product to your home as quickly as possible. Incidentally, Costco, their business plan started with words, Americans have garages. And the reason that they started with that is they said, why don't they hold our inventory instead of us?
Right.
The whole thing. Give them 50 rolls of toilet paper, even though it'll take them 3 years to use it. But here, give them 50 rolls of toilet paper. And that was brilliant too. And the way Costco operates is they want healthy suppliers, so they actually do a pretty good fair deal with their suppliers, and they pass that fair deal off to their customers, but they make money on their annual fee. So everybody's got a slightly different approach, and they all worked. So that just tells you that there is no one business model that is going to, be the be all and end all, unless it is Amazon's, because that one is amazing.
Now, Tim, they're dominating right now. Now, Tim, they're giving me indications I only have 2.5 minutes left.
All right, let's do it.
So I wanted to do a couple things. One, I wanted to request that you give me 3 copies of these to pay for them, to have them shipped to me. That would be awesome. The other thing is,
3
my
copies
sponsor,
of the
One
book?
Energy Bar today, I want to send you some of the, what'd you say?
3 copies of the book?
Yeah.
Oh, we'll send those to you, but you don't have to pay for anything. You just send me an email, tim@draper.vc, so everybody knows it. Anybody, do not write me and say, hey, I want to get to know you better. Say, if you've got a business plan, don't contact me unless you've got a business plan or you're an investor or something, you've got something real to talk to me about. I'm a venture capitalist. That's what I'm looking for. But I always do give out my email address. So there you go. But if you'll send to tim@draper.vc, if you'll send me the street address you need those sent to, we'll get that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right out to you.
I really appreciate you doing that, Tim.
No, my pleasure. And then
Okay,
what
I'll
was the
definitely do
thing
that.
about the energy bar?
Yeah, One Energy Bar. It is a vegetarian energy bar company. One Energy, um, three different varieties of bars for different times of the day, formulated by a former athlete who happens to be one of my best friends. And I think that you'll enjoy the bars and hopefully you'll give some feedback on them. But we want to send those to you and see what you think of them.
That is a cool idea because I know that I can process different things at different times of the day. And I think that that's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
It's a very competitive place to be, but if you get above the noise,
Yeah.
those things are big. Power
Yeah.
bar, Kind
Portable food.
bar,
That's what the youth want.
all of those bars, those are big businesses now.
Yeah.
So if you somehow can capture them in some way, fantastic.
You're absolutely right as it relates to One Energy. And hopefully they will get the traction that they need. They're already in some Equinox here in LA, and hopefully they'll become a household name. So that's the goal. Well, I want to let you know that Silicon Beach Mobile Startup is a production. And the production team behind Silicon Beach Mobile Startup is the reason why we've had the success that we have. So I wanted to give a special thanks out to our production head, Gaston Smith. Gaston is a graduate of USC School of Architecture. He's not only an architectural designer, he's also an artist. So he's responsible for the branding and the logo that you see. And I will make sure that he gets a copy of not only your book, Startup Hero, but as well a copy of your dad's book, The Startup Game. Now, I may want to talk to you later about your publisher because I actually have a print book that's coming out. The book is called I Decided to Win, Absolute Ownership. And the 5 areas that we cover in that book, number 1, being personal development. Number 2, being finance, relationships, career, and entrepreneurship. Because I know as an entrepreneur, as a person trying to build a career anywhere in the business world, those are all areas that in order to succeed and excel, you will only do that if you put the extra time and energy. It's that extra 10%, as you and your dad have said. So thank you again for joining us for another episode of Silicon Beach Mobile Startup. I'm your host, Baron Murdoch.